Front-engine GT cars are notorious for their high depreciation, costing owners tens and thousands of dollars. But at the same time, they can strike that sought-after balance between sportiness and comfort. In this video, I'll guide you through the cars you should steer clear of if you care about resale values and those that should definitely be on your shortlist. The differences between the models is enormous, but it's not just the unaffordable fancy stuff that depreciates relatively little. Let's have a look at the data. That's what this channel is all about. We start with the Lexus LC500, a car that is fairly popular under the viewers. Over here we have the trend split by the coupes and the convertibles. We can see that values increased a bit during the pandemic and were relatively flat till July 22. This is aligned with the market trend and a pattern that we'll see in many other markets. Since the summer of 2022, values have been declining. Yet, recently, the curve flattened a bit. On average, the cars declined by 8.3% in the coupe market and by 11.3% in the convertible market. The difference mainly results from a difference in age. The coupes are slightly older, and it are the cars from 2018 till 2020 that decreased basically nothing during the last 6 months. Newer cars of course lost more. Also, the underlying data is confirming that this market is strengthening. Used cars are selling quicker and quicker, and cars that aren't sold within 3 months are discounted less. The LC500 is definitely a car to keep track of. Let's now continue with the AMG GTs. In this graph you can see that values have been declining since the summer of 22, though the market strength increased a bit. Last year price trends flattened, bringing the year-over-year price decrease for the base model down to 9.9%, 9.4% for the S models and 8.4% for the C model. If we switch to the Rs, you can see that values are even stronger. The normal R decreased by 3.9% only and the Pros by 6.8%. The Pro market though is extremely small and these numbers might be deceiving. All cars that were for sale in March were also for sale in June, indicating that these cars don't always sell quickly. For base models this was only 31%, a much more reasonable rate that gives me more confidence in this price trend than in the other one. Let's dive now into the F-Type market. A market known for its extreme depreciation rate. If you bought a new one last year, I hope you did so with your eyes wide open. But there's also a flip side to this. Older F-Types are now relatively affordable and offer great value for money. There are a lot of models, so we'll go through them rather quickly. Over here we have the V6 market split by the pre-facelift and facelifted models. We can see that some models lost a pretty penny and that this decreased the price differences in the market. The V6 base and S models are the oldest models, and while the trend looks relatively flat compared to the newer models, the rates are still quite high. Base models lost 12.7% and S's 10.8%. If we continue with the V8s before the facelift, we can see lower rates for a few models. SVRs for example lost only 5.8% during last year, and for the V8s this is 9%. Rs on the other hand lost the most at 12.2%. This market is also significantly larger than the other ones. SVRs and S's start to be relatively rare. Switching to the latest V8s, we can see that prices are basically falling linearly. Rs lost 15.6%. and P450 is 12.6%. In monetary terms this equals to $12.7 and $9.7 thousand respectively. Now if it's a British front-engine GT car you're after, you can of course also have a look at the V8 Vantages. The 4.3 and 4.7 liters fall in the same price range as the F-Types. Over here we have the trends for the two models. Of course, there are many sub-variations of each model, but supply is too low to break it down by for example the S's and the GTS's. Looking at the trend, we can see that prices basically followed the market sentiment. An increase during the pandemic, top in the summer of 2022, and a decline, followed by a slight flattening. Compared to last year, 4.3 liters lost 6.6% and 4.7 lost 5.5%. Fairly decent results. None of the changes though are statistically significant, so there's a possibility that the decrease results from pure chance. Moving on to the old 4-liter model, we can see that rates are slowly flattening. Coupes lost 10.4% during last year and Roadsters 10.9%. Just as for all the other models, these numbers are averages. So 2019 4-liter Vantages lost slightly less and 2023 ones slightly more. Now one can argue if the Nissan Z really belongs in this video. Is it a GT? Maybe, perhaps it's more of a sports GT. In any case, I know that some of you are interested in the prices, so here we go. We can see that used cars were listed way above MSRP after their introduction, but that this was only a temporary thing. Since January of this year, used prices fell below new prices. This also means that the depreciation rate is highly dependent on your purchase price. Did you get one of these cars and pay the premium? Then you're looking at a loss of 20.6% during last year. Your total loss is of course enormous if you got one of the first ones and paid an even higher premium. Yet, if you got one at MSRP, you're looking at a loss of 11.1%. Not unreasonable for a brand new car in this segment. Nismos appear to be following a similar depreciation trajectory. The rates though seem to be higher than for a Toyota Supra, but I need a bit more data before I can share the specifics on that one. That brings us to perhaps one of the most famous GT markets, the one for Ferraris. Now usually I upload a separate video on the front engine Ferrari market, but because I reduced the number of videos, I will include that market in this video. Ferrari fans, pay attention. The differences in this market are large. The Roma has never been known for its strong residuals, and most likely never will be. We can see that prices are still falling at a quick pace. Last year they decreased by 15.6% or $41,700. A bottom appears to be far away. The Californias are depreciating at approximately half the rate of the Romas. The base model lost 8.1% during last year, and for the Ts this is 7.8%. The difference between the model years is large though. 2010 Californias and 2015 California Ts hardly decreased, while the 2014 and respectively 2018 cars decreased more than the average. Let's now have a look at some big hitters. Starting with the A12, we can see that they came down a lot. Convertibles sit at $570,000, while this used to be $750,000. For the coupes this is $450,000 versus $370,000. The latter ones did also slightly better last year at minus 8.6%. For the convertibles this is 9.3%. F12s on the other hand are still relatively close to their market top. They have been drifting down slowly since the summer of 22, but much less than some other markets. Last year they only lost 2.2% or $6,000, but this change isn't statistically confirmed and could be simply the result of chance. If this motivates you even more to get an F12, you need to be aware that it takes dealers a relatively long time to sell, but that they only get discounted between 0 and 3% if they don't sell. Also, the dealers know that this is a strong market. Moving on to the 599, we can see that also here the price trend has been relatively strong, but recently showed some signs of slight weakness. Prices have been declining since October 23. That is the longest period of declines since I started to track the prices in October 2020. Compared to last year, the depreciation is still low at minus 2.3%, and again, the change is not confirmed. The increased weakness is then also mainly driven by sellers who are discounting the cars that aren't selling. Some unsold 599 prices dropped up to 7%, whereas this rate used to be between 0 and 3%. This could be a sign that demand is slowing and that we'll see slightly higher depreciation rates in this market. Now many of you have been asking about the price trends for the 550s and 570Ms. I have some data on those cars, but not yet a year's worth of data. Looking at the trends between October 23 and July 24, we can see that prices have been stable for the coupes. 550s are up by 3.3%, and for the 575Ms this is 2%. You need to remember though that these markets are small and that the uncertainties are elevated for these rates. So we covered now quite a few models. Of course, not all GT cars in the world are included, only the ones for which I have data available. Cars like the Bentley GT and Maserati Gran Turismo are missing, for example. Let me know down below in the comment section which other GTs you would like to see included. Let us deduce some insights now from all of those numbers and figure out which front-engine GT cars you should avoid and which ones should be on your shortlist if you're a value-conscious buyer. To the overview. Over here we have all the changes we just looked at, including the ones of the previous GT market update, but more about that in a moment. Looking at the current results, we can see that the average rate of 9.3% is relatively high. The average rate for all cars that feature on my channel sits currently at minus 7.4%. Front-engine GTs simply tend to lose slightly more. Naturally, it helps if you pick a car that has a low depreciation rate for this category. Of course, it's quite obvious that you need to buy one of the older V12 Ferraris to avoid much of this elevated rate of 9.3%. Now, while some people shopping for a nice GT car might be able to afford one of these, running costs are really rather high. So let's look a little bit higher on the list. Over here we find the California, the V8 Vantage and the AMG GT. Of course, they're also not cheap to run, but finding a slightly older California, Vantage or AMG GT will definitely limit your depreciation rate. Something to look into if you care about values. The LC500 though might be the most sensible choice from this list. Looking at the other end, we can see that the depreciation rates for the F-Types remain rather high. Sure, the first generation depreciates less quickly than the second generation, but compared to other cars of a similar age, the rates are high. Naturally, also the Roma sits at the top. I think we all know why that's the case. Finally, we have the Nissan Zs with the highest rate. Yet, you need to bear in mind that this is pushed up by the price premiums. There's one more thing, which makes this even worse for the quickest depreciating cars. The bottom seems far away. Looking at the Roma and most of the F-Types, we can see that the depreciation rate is mostly the same as in February 2024. The changes are very small, if they exist at all. This doesn't inspire confidence towards the future value development. The LC500 though, and to a lesser extent the AMG GTs, saw a decrease in the depreciation rate. A decrease that potentially could continue in the future. Now, speaking about the future, it's important to point out that all of these rates are descriptive. They contain some information about the future short-term trend, but cannot predict the long-term price development. And with that we arrived at the end of the video. Now, if you enjoy this data-driven way of analyzing car prices, but would like to see a video for a different car, head over to my channel. Over there you'll find data-driven market updates for a large variety of cars. Can't find the car you're looking for? Let me know the name of the car by commenting it down below in the comment section. Once there are enough requests for a certain car, I'll make a video about it. As always, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again in 2 weeks for a fresh market update.